Democrats are screwed, and the President of the United States, according to former Vice President and 2020 presidential candidate Joe Biden, has fanned the flames of white supremacy. And that's where we begin on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show this week, when joining me at my table is Princeton University professor and author of Entrenchment, Paul Starr, and my partner in politics, veteran White House correspondent Matthew Cooper. Up first, once again, gun violence has struck America. A white nationalist terror attack in El Paso, Texas, and a mass shooting in Dayton, Ohio have brought into focus yet again the epidemic of gun violence in America and put the country's attention on the president's racism squarely in the crosshairs. Who are we as a people? Is the blame only the Republicans, or do Democrats share some of the responsibility for the lack of enactment of common sense gun legislation? What do we do about the NRA? What do we do about a president who fans the flames of white supremacy? Matt and I have a lot to say on this one and the state of the Democratic Party's presidential race. Who is my favorite candidate? You might be surprised. Here we go. All right, Matt, we begin. And we begin with the horror of El Paso and Dayton, Ohio, where, once again, gun violence has killed so many innocent Americans. Mass shootings. Clearly fueled, Matt, by the words of the President of the United States, a manifesto, issued just a few minutes before the attack, almost directly quoting Trump. There are no words, right? And you and I need to find words now. I just find that this is one of those rare times when you can say unequivocally, there is enough flame to go around. It goes right to Trump. And in my opinion, that's the way that it is. I'm going to quote Joe Biden. Ready? Trump has fanned the flames of white supremacy. Matthew, talk to me.
Well, I basically agree, and it's very, it's infuriating and it's sad. I mean, he's not directly to blame in the sense that he pulled the trigger, but he's encouraged this, this crazy replacement theory, the Jews will not replace us. I mean, he hasn't got to that level, but this idea that we're being invaded is, something he's encouraged and something that clearly animated this nut job in Texas. And it's deeply infuriating.
To say the least. And I think I want to talk about that. Last night in Times Square, a car backfired and people went wacko, and there was another place a similar thing happened. People are such a nervous wreck from all of this. And that just takes us where we need to go. Yeah. Mitch McConnell, Republicans, NRA. We'll talk about maybe a few cracks in the armor of all of this, but can we just begin first with Republicans? What is going on there? This is insanity on their part. I mean, literally, I'm beginning to think they are insane.
Well, they muscled through Newtown. I mean, that was, just an unbelievable moment in American life. And people thought, well, God, a guy guns down an elementary school. Surely something will change. But they held firm. But
that's not an answer. And I am putting my buddy Matt, talk to me, calm me down. I don't understand it. I don't care how, first of all, the NRA does not have the power that it used to have. We all know that. It's still powerful. We do know that they're all in, for a massive amounts of campaign, contributions to each of these guys. But these people have children. These people have wives or husbands. I mean, I don't understand this. I do not understand how anybody can put political careers before crazy mass murders mowed down like river rats. What's going on here? And whose failure is it that they're not being held to account?
I think you have an answer to that. I don't know. Do you? Was that a rhetorical question?
No, I'm going to say something incredibly controversial. I blame the Democrats. I blame the Democrats because I
that?
believe the Democrats, for all their talking and for all their hand-wringing, for everything else, have not been willing to go to the mat on this. No pun intended, Mr. Matt. I mean that seriously. That there are options here. If you can't do it legislatively, you can do it by winning the court of public opinion. Why did Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer not fly back to Washington, get on the steps of Capitol Hill, and start screaming like lunatics and bringing their entire group in and saying, okay, we've had it. And here's where we are. There is a way to do this. Not just, waiting, they're putting it on the Republicans. Okay, Mitch, Nancy's new thing is keep going after Mitch. No, you need to take the bull by the horn, literally, and get out there and organize and do what you have to do. They haven't done that. They're not willing to go to the mat on that. And I'm wondering why. By the way, same thing on impeachment. So maybe it's Nancy. I don't know. But at this particular moment in American history, when the polls show that even Republicans want, legislation on gun control, that they're not getting it, why are the Dems being so backward, being so laid back, being so quiet? I think that's fair.
It's fair. Could be.
Is that all you have to say?
No,
you think you think I'm off base on this? I mean, do you think that they could do more?
I think of all the things going on at the moment, the Pelosi not flying to Washington to be with Schumer, who was already in front of the Capitol, is sort of ancillary to other things that are going on. I just don't think I don't think there's insufficient Democratic outrage, I guess is my take.
I so disagree. First of all, there's this thing called you need to soothe the hearts and minds of Americans right now, and obviously this president isn't incapable of doing that. And she has the next most powerful position. I find it bizarre that she hasn't utilized it as the mama-in-chief, grandma-in-chief, never mind, Speaker of the House, to do that. Because I've talked to people around here. People are crazy. I mean, we had Parkland not too far away here.
Sure.
And this is a gun, toting state. Everybody I spoke with yesterday here is a wreck, including, by the way, my Republican friends.
Yeah.
And everybody's rolling their eyes and saying, a pox on both their houses. You can you have to walk the talk. Is that how that goes? Did I say that right?
Yeah. That works.
Yeah. If nothing's getting done, it means both sides are not doing it. I guess that's where I am on all of it. And it's not enough to talk the talk. Now, that being said, Mike Turner, who I call the snake, ever watch him talk? He always licks his lips like a snake's tongue. Who is a very problematic, he's a Trump psychopath. Well, it turns out his daughter was across the street in the bar across the street in Dayton, and he freaked out, and finally that broke the juggernaut for him, and he's come out publicly to say, assault weapons ban, please. Okay, that's something. Is there something else that is something for you?
I think there are little cracks in the armor. There's more interest in these red flag laws and stuff. But look, it's this is he's the exception, right? I mean, for the most part, they're back to their ridiculous arguments about video games. And
like no other country, like China doesn't have video games, Right. People
exactly.
Their insanity and crazy isn't.
I mean, they're really reaching for video games. If they have to bring that one up.
I mean, seriously, right? So, and Lindsey, who's the Democrat working with Lindsey Graham on the red flag law?
Yeah, I can't remember.
I can't remember who it is, but I'm saying to myself, are you kidding? See, that's just another place where Democrats are so stupid because the Republicans just mow all over, there's that metaphor again, are mowing down Republicans, Republicans are mowing down Democrats and winning over the arguments all the time, and playing as hardball as they can, and then Democrats trying to cut deals with the Republicans.
Right.
And just that makes me insane. Just that right there does me in.
because you think they shouldn't be doing that.
Well, what I think is, what is it, almost 3 years later? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And let me give you a metaphor for that. How it doesn't work. The New York Times, the following day, runs the headline, Trump urges unity versus racism. And everybody went nuts. I went nuts after Nora MacDonald, the new anchor for CBS News, did an equally vanilla, that's my word of the week, by the way, take on what happened.
Yeah.
I have a problem with this. So now...
no, look, the Times headline was crazy. I
mean, so assailing hate but not guns was what they put in.
That wasn't much better.
That was like, thank you, because you and I are the only two who say everybody else felt better about it. My point being, you're treating this situation that we have with this particular moron in the presidency as normal when it's not normal. And the reason it's been normalized is because Democrats are acting like it's normal. And the reporters are acting like, or at least headline writers are acting like it's normal. It's not normal. And it's been normalized. And that, to me, is a huge problem. No?
No, I agree. I mean, but with Trump, it's a different thing. They're just taking his teleprompter speech as the lead story.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're sort of incredulous about it.
Right. Right.
Incredulous that they're accepting of it. And that's not the way to think about Trump. I mean, it's not really what Trump is. We've been through this enough times that you wouldn't make Trump's teleprompter speech the lead story, because that's not really what the lead story is.
I frankly think there's something going on with the reporters themselves that's problematic, but maybe we'll save that story for another day, because I really do want to talk about the NRA. As all of this is going on, $6 million mansion for Wayne LaPierre, the CEO, that was uncovered this morning. Right. Dana Loesch comes out and goes wacko over the red flag law. They're not changing their position whatsoever.
No, they are riven, with its scandals and
right.
divisions over there.
And your bankruptcy, by the way.
It's unbelievable, really.
So, I was looking to see what their contributions are. They're contributing, to all of the Republicans mostly. But the $10,000 is not like they're these like...
The power is not the money. The power is the fear of the membership.
And who was it?
The fear of endorsements.
Yeah. Well, but it also is money. But
it's less money with them than
yes,
it is with
I'll give you that. Okay. And who was it who said, the love of my life, who is not getting enough traction, Mr. Montana, cutie pie.
Yes, you are the one-woman band.
That's not true.
President Bullock. You and Mrs. Bullock are about the only ones.
No. I'm disappointed because I think that he clearly does not have powerful handlers in New York. Somebody in New York or Washington should have picked him up and gotten him out there, right. And they didn't. But he was on CNN last night. I think it was CNN, and he was talking. He's a lifelong gun owner, and he had his 11-year-old, I think, nephew or niece was killed by gun violence. I don't know if you know that story. It's pretty awful. But that being said, he was talking about what the NRA used to be.
Right.
As to what the NRA under Wayne LaPierre's leadership has become. I think the people are way ahead of the politicians on this, because the polls even tell you that. They're all for, 80%, I think it is, 80 to 90% want more gun control laws enacted. And that has to include Republicans. Hello. So, yeah. So I don't even think that's the thing. So
the craziest members are driving the lobby. And that's the problem.
Okay. Or how it's being reported is wrong.
Right. No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah. There's a lot of that going on. And I think that's important. Joaquin Castro, brother of the current presidential candidate, doubled down last night. He went crazy. He tweeted all the names of Trump donors in El Paso. And gosh almighty, the Republicans went apeshit crazy. I thought it was brilliant, and I thought it was right, and it's all public information, by the way. Anyway, what'd you think about that?
Well, when you're 0.5%, you gotta do
you
things
think it was
to get attention.
you think it was totally political, and it wasn't?
No, I'm sure it was genuine rage. And some of it is rage at, Beto, who he can't stand, and who's getting more ink. Do we still say ink? He's getting more pixels.
I struggle
Since
with that
the shooting. Look, I take him at his word. He's sincerely outraged. And yeah, sure. I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable. I mean, I think you want to be clear. You're not saying those people shot their neighbors, but it's not an unreasonable thing to point out.
I was right before we went to record. There was I couldn't see her name. I had the TV on at the back of my head. I picked up that there was a Hispanic talking head on who said that who is bilingual, obviously, and said she started to speak Spanish to her kid and changed her mind and went to English because she's afraid to speak Spanish in public. And somebody else chimed in and said, I'm having the same issues. I mean, these people are terrorized. I'm right. This is not okay. This is just no way for Americans of any for us to
no.
find
I mean,
acceptable.
when you have an ethnic attack like Charleston or Pittsburgh or this, it is going to resonate deeply with everyone, hopefully, but especially with people who are in the targeted group. I mean, it's
bad. It's bad. Tucker Carlson says there is no white supremacy problem. It's a, quote, hoax.
Well, Tucker's being an idiot and demagoguing, because I don't even think he believes that. I mean, if this guy...
I think he believes that. I don't give him an ounce of bailing out on anything.
I'm not bailing him out. I think it's worse to be cynical and say
he's a horror.
Believe that.
He's a horror. He's a horror. And I like Hannity last night, too, by the way. The night before that. Hannity says, we need guns everywhere. Everybody should be walking around with AK-47s hung up. And
everybody needs a gun.
Okay. And I lived in El Salvador. You want to know what it's like to live like that, where there are, guns on every corner? Where you have to put, barbed wire on the top of your courtyards and big, bold iron rods in your doorway because you don't know who's going to storm you. And when you walk out of your house and just go to the mailbox, you look because there's a guy swinging an AK-47, in big green fatigues, on your doorstep because he could accuse you of it. That's what this country is becoming. 2 countries issued travel warnings to the U.S. To the United States of America. Help. Yeah.
I mean,
you don't sound as outraged as I am. Am I over the top again?
No, I am outraged. Oh
my God, I'm so pissed off about this. You know what? I think, Matt, if we don't fix this is it. I really think that we are at that point. If we don't fix this mess, we are finished.
Well, it does point out all the problems with the political system. I mean, you got a majority that's for doing something, and then you got an obstinate minority that's grinding the gears and making it impossible. So it as bad as it is, it points to a larger problem of how the system isn't working.
Obama spoke.
Obama did speak.
What do you think of that?
Well, it was probably a good time for him to weigh in. It was a little long.
He writes books. It would be long.
Yeah, it was a little...
It was the preamble to the new book.
It was a little long. Might have been time to get on camera and do it instead of a statement. But,
I agree with that.
But I think appropriate. I think if he had somehow been able to get, W to sign on to, then it would have had even more pop.
And I'm curious because that was something I was going to ask you about. Isn't it odd that W didn't? Now I know he had a grandson being born that day.
W was an NRA guy. I mean, he did, let the assault weapons ban expire and on his watch and whatnot. But he might be persuadable on some of this.
Not that he matters all that much.
No, he's from a different Republican Party.
Right.
It's kind of disappeared.
Right. But the grandson, right, made a statement.
Right, the only Bush to endorse Trump.
Is that true? I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, George P. Bush. Yeah, everybody else made it clear that they voted for not
Hillary.
Trump. But yeah, so he's still a Republican in Texas, and he hasn't broken with Trump.
Let's go to Texas. Let's talk about the fact that the president is going there today, very briefly. So what?
Right.
I mean, right? I mean, this is sad. This is a sad moment. But I bring it up to bring it into a conversation I think we should have, and that's the state of the race for the next for 2020. And I want to talk to you about polls, but before I do that, I want to talk about Beto O'Rourke. And boy, he went to town. He wasn't pulling any punches, bad language and all, and good for him. But he's way down in the polls. Maybe he'll get a little bump from all of this because that's the way it works. But you know what I want to talk to you about? Time for, because I'm not a Democrat, I'm an independent, but the fact is the Democrats need to win the Senate back. And wouldn't O'Rourke do better running for the Senate? Couldn't he secure that?
Well, I think that's tougher right now. A lot of people have gotten in the race who are serious candidates, and I think if he were to say, I want to be president, but now I'll settle for Texas. I know where you're coming from on that. I mean, Democrats need to win the Senate, but I don't think it's as easy as him just changing his mind and then getting the nomination.
Well, there's a way to finesse it. I mean, you don't have to say I'm changing my mind. I mean, you could say, in the interest of what I think is so important for us at this point, that we take back the Senate so that we can do what we need to do to get these laws enacted.
Yeah, I think it's just tough to clear out the women and Hispanics and others who are interested in running for the seat.
I know, because he's so loved. He is very well loved in Texas. In Texas, it's everybody's quitting the job. All those Republicans gone.
Right. No, I think they're the canary in the coal mine. Exactly.
And in reality, there's no way O'Rourke can win the presidency.
Yeah.
All right.
That seems. Yeah, seems unlikely in the extreme.
So I guess then it becomes a responsibility. How much do you really care about?
I'm just saying, don't underestimate the difficulty of clearing the field. I don't think that's as simple as him.
Well, it may not be simple, but I think it is doable, and I do think it would be important. But let's go to this. What happened? Hold it. I have to get my notes because I want to make sure I get everything correct here. Quinnipiac, home regional defense. Where is it? August 26. Warren up, Harris down. Biden leads among U.S. Dems. 14 Dems have less than 1%. And Elizabeth Warren is the big winner in the second round of Democratic presidential debates. But Biden retained his front-runner status with 32. He's down 2 points or something, which could be within the margin of error. And he's leading with independent voters who lean Democratic. And I think that old Biden, he seems really secure, huh? You surprised?
Yeah, I mean, it's not budging at the moment, but it's still early, and he does show some signs of frailty, and we'll see.
Word.
What?
That frailty word. I get so angry with that frailty word.
Well, I didn't say it was senile. It's vulnerable. I don't know, whatever word you want.
Well, it's he was being interviewed the other night, and it's funny because we never saw Joe a lot in these one-on-ones. He's really in a new position because even on the 2 times that he ran for president before, he was not, all eyes were not on him. Agreed?
To say the least.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So the Joe we have all always known is that one who's got the twinkle in his eye and gets up before the camera and it's kind of cute and funny and whatever. It was right. And I think, that Joe, I never understood how he got so far as he got because he seemed pretty, milquetoast to me. I mean, kind of sweet and adorable, but not a genius.
Right.
He proved during his vice presidency to be quite effective, and even one might say, a genius. And I didn't always agree with some of his decisions, but boy, that presidency was as clean as any I've ever seen, and that wasn't all Obama by any stretch of the imagination. We have to remember why he took Biden on because of his foreign policy. So my point to you is, and I'm curious to see what you say about this, is that this Biden, who I saw, for instance, so introspective, so thoughtful, so slow, is not necessarily frail. I think we're starting to see the Biden that everybody in Congress saw that got him to go to the head of his class for how many years in Congress. What about that? Have you met him? Do you know him?
Yeah, I have. Well, I think that's right. I think that's, I think we're seeing a more deliberative Biden than his colleagues knew. And so I think that's a good point.
He's wise now. I think the death of his son brought a new wisdom to him, a new sensibility to him. And let me just run this by you, and then you can respond. And that is, when you're up against this wacko-doodle Trump, though that kind of measured affectation could seem frail when it's not. It's normal for a seasoned statesman. That's what we used to celebrate.
I hear what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with it. When I said frail, I meant that I think the lead is still vulnerable.
Well, that's for sure. Yeah, of course
although
it is.
I think it's proving a little more resilient than
right.
I might have imagined. But yes, I think there's no question the contrast with Trump is works in Biden's favor, obviously.
Or not. That's my point. I think it doesn't necessarily work in his favor if we're expecting, this flamboyant, loudmouthed, oh my God, you got to go against Trump with all your gang buster, rat-a-tat.
Well, that's what you want Nancy to do. So
No. Nancy's not running for president of the United States.
Right. But you want Nancy out there with the bullhorn.
She's the one who should be carrying that mantle, sure.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think you put it on the presidential candidates.
Right.
Yeah, that's my...
Yeah, okay. No, I just want to be sure where you're coming from on that.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm not saying that she's got to scream like a crazy person. I think she needs to get out there and literally take the bull by the horn.
Okay. No, I hear where you're coming from.
So yeah. And by the way, I'll pick on you on frail. Remember how you picked on me last week for all of...
You can pick on me on frail. I didn't really mean it the same way, but...
I'm picking on you, buddy.
I didn't say brittle boned or liver spotted,
But it comes out the same way.
I didn't mean it.
Oh my God. Oh my God. What about Elizabeth Warren? This woman, this Democratic Party.
I love when you say this woman.
But honestly, she cannot win a general election. She can't.
Well, we may get to find out.
Help me, please.
We may get to find out. I don't know.
I mean, Pocahontas will be right back, and Tom Tums will be beating out of that Republican Party so fast.
That's just the least of it. Yeah.
Well, but that was pretty effective.
that was a big push.
Yeah, that was like, oh my gosh. I just don't understand. I mean, and is that a failure of Pelosi as well to make sure?
I don't. And now you're overestimating Pelosi's abilities. I mean, this really isn't Pelosi's to manage.
I don't know. Think of how she maneuvered herself in the whole Hillary thing. I think she's pretty powerful when it comes to the presidential candidates. But again, I want to go back. I don't want to stay on her. Let's go back to Warren, which is, she concerns me. It's clear that Bernie is toast. And the Kamala Harris thing, though, I find very interesting, and I think this goes back to what I said after she pulled her racist thing on Biden. She surged for 5 seconds, and I think she's actually a little lower than she was prior to that at this point. And I think it backfired on her big time, which is why she felt so hamstrung during the last debate, because she wasn't quite sure how she was going to play any of it. What do you think?
No, I think there's something to that. Look, it's a very fluid race. Buttigieg way up, down, back down. I think we're going to see this for a long time, and it's not really going to mean that much until we get to, this autumn, and then we'll have a better sense of what the real contours of the race are.
Yeah, and Buttigieg is another one who I find very fascinating, but I don't see him going far, although I think he's maybe the most astute of them all. He's got a talent that's just ridiculous. It's wonderful. I mean, he knows what to say, he knows how to say it, he knows how to play it, but I don't see him going far. And the other one I wanted to talk briefly about before we close is Senator Cory Booker. What's your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, I still think he's considerable talent with a fascinating backstory, but he still hasn't had his kind of breakout moment. It looks like he might be getting there in the Detroit debate, but he didn't quite. And, I think it's still a very long path to the nomination for him. But, as I've said before, if you were picking value stocks, you want somebody who you thought was trading below their real price, I would probably take him.
I just don't see him going anywhere. He's missing a factor. And I was trying to figure out what that factor is that he's missing. And I just don't think I'm going to use a word. I don't think it's exactly correct, but you know how I get so irritated with Elizabeth Warren and her earnestness?
Yeah.
I think Cory Booker lacks it. He doesn't come across as brilliant. You see the piece that's missing with him? What's your theory on because there's something missing there.
Well, yeah, I think there are weird parts of it. I mean, I think there are parts of his backstory that he just doesn't emphasize. I mean, the courage that it took to do what he did in Newark to take a black establishment, or even the fact that he's like a Rhodes Scholar and is a big football player. Like, it's something people don't even know about him. It's just
he hasn't framed himself well. I'll give you that. But there's something in his delivery that lacks either sincerity or shows intellectual prowess. He's coming across somewhat as a lightweight to call it for, which is ridiculous since he's a Rhodes Scholar and we know all the other
he
stuff.
Shouldn't be. Yeah.
Right. But that's how he comes across, and I don't think he can overcome that. That's why I said, I think I said last week, I thought it was a little early for him. Maybe next time around. He needs to grow into the role a little bit more or something like that. I just don't know. I thought I'd throw that out. Did I miss any of them? Amy Klobuchar puts me to sleep every time she starts to talk.
Yeah, I mean, she's had two big chances in these debates to kind of, lay down a marker, and she just hasn't done it.
I don't know how she got elected in the first place. I got to tell you, I was watching her this morning, and I'm going, honey, could you change your octave a little? Go a little high, go a little low. Could you say something to be real instead of trying to sell your presidency? Possible president. Oh my God, she doesn't have it. There's another one. Stick to the Senate, honey. We need you in that seat.
Yeah. Well, she's just not putting it together so far.
Right. Okay. Who did I miss? What did I miss?
I don't know. There are 25 others, but Well,
yeah. Montana, ride in on your horse, save the day.
Yeah, you're his squaw.
I am for Steve Bullock all the way.
You're his Pocahontas.
I'm telling you, this guy's got it. He could do it. He could pull it off with his aw shucks, cowboy.
I could see you at the podium.
All right, honey, I guess it's time we giddy up out of here.
All right.
Talk to you next week.
See you next time, partner.
All right. Bye-bye. You were listening to The Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern at hallicasserjayne.com and is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and on all your favorite apps. You can find The Halli Casser-Jayne Show on your Alexa device, too. Just say The Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Oh, and come play with me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show. There's a nefarious political battle going on behind the scenes, and only voters can change the battle's outcome. Pulitzer Prize winner Paul Starr addresses the nefarious battle in his new book, Entrenchment, Wealth, Power, and the Constitution of Democratic Societies. A professor of sociology and public affairs at Princeton University, co-founder and founding co-editor of the American Prospect magazine, Starr has published 7 previous books. In Entrenchment, he addresses the struggle over entrenchment, efforts to bring about change in ways that opponents will find difficult to undo, the perpetuation of unjust power. Let's talk with Paul Starr. Well, this is a book that's long overdue. I am absolutely thrilled that you were able to finally do a book on entrenchment and how our politics work. I don't think a lot of people know about or think in these terms of entrenchment. So tell us what that is and how it affects our politics. Define entrenchment.
Okay, so by entrenchment, I just mean hard to reverse change. To entrench something is to cement it, to make it difficult to reverse. And sometimes that's intentional. So, for example, when people draw up a constitution, they often make it hard to change, hard to amend. That's a deliberate choice. And in many ways, that kind of entrenchment is very valuable. It can protect equality and freedom. But, of course, there's another kind of entrenchment, the entrenchment of power and of privilege and of wealth. And this book is really about the tension between the two of those, but the efforts to entrench power and privilege, and on the other hand, to create rules, like constitutional rules, that limit power and privilege.
How do things become entrenched?
Well, some of them become entrenched, as I've already indicated, by choice, through processes like writing a constitution, drawing up rules that make something hard to change. But much of entrenched power and wealth come about through slow processes that aren't really chosen by anybody very carefully. I mean, there are some people who are very interested in the outcome, but it's not as though there are any kind of collective or fair-minded choice involved. And so a lot of the book is really about those processes through which entrenched power and privilege develop. So I'm concerned, for example, with landed aristocracies, with slavery, with concentrated corporate power. And some of these are historical problems, but much of it is still with us today.
I bring it up because I think that a lot of what is entrenched, we are unaware of the fact that it's becoming entrenched. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Right. And that's why I wanted to bring that point up, because, it's happening today. There's a conversation. We're going to talk about Trump in a little bit, but the reason I bring it up is because there are a lot of people who say, how did we get where we are today? Like it came out of nowhere. And I know that it didn't come out of nowhere.
Right. Yeah. So there's a long history here and a continuing struggle. It's, I think, partly in the very nature of societies that combine capitalism and democracy. And capitalism is continually creating new forms of wealth and privilege and new forms of political influence. And the democratic aspect of society is often at odds with that, trying to resist the implications, the consequences of concentrated power. So I don't see this as having just happened recently. It's a continual struggle through history.
So these forces of wealth who want to be the powerful and control and do everything that they do, do you see them as evil? Do you see them as run amok? Who are these forces, and how do you perceive them? Is there a right and wrong here, or a good or bad? Or
well, I think in some cases, yes. So one of the chapters of this book concerns slavery, And do I think slaveholding was evil? Yes, I do. that slavery was a form of entrenched power and domination. There was, what I argue in the book is that there was a kind of entrenched contradiction built into the United States at its founding. The principles on the one hand of freedom and the right to the pursuit of happiness, and at the same time, other rules, some of them in the Constitution, that protected slave owners. And different parts of the country grew up in different ways, the North and the South, the free states and the slave states. And ultimately, war was the only way of resolving it. Oh, that is the most terrible kind of entrenched power and wealth, and with the most bloody and disastrous consequences. But, not every form of entrenched power and privilege is like that. So let me just take a current example, which is not as horrible, but it's still something to consider. When the internet was first developing in the 1990s, people expected that it would decentralize and redistribute and equalize and democratize and break up all sorts of concentrations of power. Well, today, the online economy is dominated by Amazon, by Google, by Facebook, by Apple. They have become extraordinary concentrations of wealth and power. And they're not in a class with slaveholders. They do many good things for us. On the other hand, the economy is out of whack. They have far too much power. Try competing with one of those companies these days. You're not going to have much of a chance.
Yeah, well, but whatever happened to antitrust?
Right.
I mean, it's a free-for-all on the internet these days, and we know that. It's interesting. I love this book because, this is the kind of thing that's out there, Paul, but we don't think about it. Uh-huh. And I'm so happy that you wrote it because I really did spend a lot of time thinking about it, because you can't institute change, and as a reporter type, you can't report it unless you really get that picture from that angle. And I think a lot of Americans right now, it would do them a good thing to read this to understand exactly what's going on. There's a lot of manipulation in all of this.
Yes.
But you were talking about money, but I think we also have to talk about social mores, which is another avenue that they take in trying to manipulate and control us. And they work at entrenching themselves there, and that's been very effective, at least for one party. Talk to me.
So I'm not exactly sure what you're driving at here.
I'm going at wedge issues and using wedge issues to entrench. I don't want to go there yet, but I do have a conversation about the Federalist Society that I think, we need to talk about. But does that help you at all?
Okay. So I think let me just give you the way I think things are developing. So I think there are two anxieties that are now driving American politics. And on the one hand, there is the anxiety on the right about the emergence of new majorities in America as a result of demographic change and cultural change that involve immigration, that involve changes in racial and gender relations. And all of these are very threatening to people on the right. And it is, I think, partly because of panic on the right that Republicans were willing to accept Trump, that they have adopted such extreme policies on immigration, on voter suppression, on a whole series of things. And then there's another anxiety. It's the anxiety among liberals and progressives that entrenched right-wing power may be so great that popular majorities cannot reverse it. It may be so great because of the control that Republicans have over the Supreme Court, the advantages that they enjoy in the U.S. Senate because of the overrepresentation of rural, predominantly white and conservative states, and because of the enormous power of wealth that is arrayed on behalf of right-wing causes, the Koch brothers and others, and you could go on. And it's these two anxieties which I think frame the situation that we're in today. Yeah, so I think there is on the right an interest. You mentioned wedge issues. Yeah, an interest in getting white working class people to be more concerned about immigration, to be more concerned about race, and the men in particular to be concerned about changes in gender relations, to distract from the realities of what actually the Republican Party does when it's in office. I mean, the one big thing that Trump has succeeded in doing was the passage of that tax legislation in 2017 that overwhelmingly benefits the rich. And yet you have all these working class people who are not the beneficiaries. What kind of populism is this? Well, it's a phony populism, obviously.
You teach. You've got the future of America in your hands. Who are these people? What's happening? How did we get here? How ignorant can you be to vote against your own best self-interests? Surely you've got to have something to say about that. And are you concerned for the next generation?
Well, I think the next generation is very different from, certainly from older people today. There's an enormous gap. Younger people, millennials, and people are now in their teens, young adults. They're much more socially diverse. Their views are much more progressive. Actually, I think there's a lot of hope there. But unfortunately, there are also a lot of reasons for young people to be cynical, for young people to believe that nothing they do will matter. And so it's really crucial that political leaders give them a basis for hope.
So let me throw this out at you. Let me throw out the Federalist Society, who worked diligently over years and years and years to set up so that the court system would be, become conservative. We saw what just happened, who's on the court. And you have that juxtaposition of that's entrenched right now, and it could get worse. We're going to talk about if Trump gets reelected. And you have these kids, I say kids because, I'm not young anymore, in college coming out, these, millennials or the newer generation. I get all crazy with those names for these, whatever. But the bottom line being, they're in one place and the system is in a different place.
Yes. And I think looking to the future, there is going to be a clash between the judiciary and the elected branches, especially as those elected branches feel the impact of these younger generations and their different views. And I think exactly how this is going to shape up, it's not very clear. It very much depends, I think, on the outcome of the 2020 election. Because if Trump is reelected, he will very likely have at least one, and probably two, Supreme Court appointments. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is getting on in years, and so is Stephen Breyer. And if we go from a 5-4 conservative court to a 7-2 conservative court, it's going to last for a long time, and it's going to be much more radical than the court is now. There won't be, the lone swing vote, the one conservative who ends up siding with the liberals on a case now and then. When you have a 7-2 court, that's not going to happen. And so that court, I think, is likely to move very far to the right, just as, looking ahead in years, just as voters are moving to the left. That is the basis for a titanic conflict.
I think that's what we have right now. I think it's happening. I think even within the Democratic Party, if you look at what's going on and you see the kids trying to assert, their way into a system that's not quite ready to adopt or adapt their thinking. Strange times, needless to say. Strange, but also diabolical, and I think dangerous. This Trump thing is, we're talking entrenchment. Is this the future? Is he the future? But you know what? Before I even go there, let me ask you this question. Let me ask you about the Democrats versus the Republicans. The Republicans seem better at entrenchment than Democrats do. You have a theory on that? You have a thought on that?
Well, I think Republicans are much more ideologically unified. And now they are politically unified behind Trump in a way that I think nobody would have expected just a few years ago. So that does give them an advantage. Democrats vary a great deal. They're more socially diverse, and really they vary according to the issues that they care about. There's a substantial gap between the center of the Democratic Party and the left. yeah, it's tougher, I think, for Democrats to unite around a positive agenda. I think they agree pretty much on being opposed to Trump, on being opposed to the Republicans, but it's tougher for them to agree on what to do.
This is not a good time to be having a tough time to agree on what to do, in my opinion, and it concerns me greatly. Right now, Trump is running rings around Nancy for whatever anybody else has to say about it in terms of impeachment, which to me becomes a moral issue more than anything. And the loss of power. I mean, giving up your own power as Speaker, as the Congress is what we're really up to here. We're talking about a branch of government that's supposedly a co-equal branch, losing all its power. And I'm curious as to what you think about the fact that nobody's really doing anything about it other than saying, well, we'll see what happens in 2020. Paul, what if he does win again in 2020? Then what? I mean, you can't go back and fix this. Be an entrenchment in terms of yes, the power of the presidency.
Yeah. So there are a lot of things to worry about so far as a second term for Donald Trump is concerned. We've already talked about the Supreme Court. That's one thing to worry about. Another thing to worry about is climate change. If we fail to do anything until, at best the mid to late 2020s after Trump, it will become increasingly difficult politically and economically to meet any of the targets for reducing carbon emissions in order to keep the world below 2 degrees of warming. And the consequences for the whole planet are just staggering. Another area that I've written about, I have an article in the Atlantic, in the May issue of the Atlantic, that's about this, is about the consequences for international relations and arms control. So one of the things that hasn't gotten much attention is that Trump has withdrawn the United States from a key nuclear arms agreement with Russia, shows no signs of renewing another nuclear arms agreement with Russia. From the late 1980s through the Obama years, we actually made tremendous progress in reducing nuclear arsenals. In fact, the United States and Russia eliminated 90% of their nuclear weapons. And as a result of mutual inspections and greater understanding of each other's systems, there was a tremendously reduced risk of accidental nuclear war. And we're on exactly the opposite path now, with a real potential for a renewed arms race. So recently there's been some writing about hypersonic missiles. Now, these are missiles that travel at 8 times the speed of sound. They would allow very little time to react. And that increases the risk of an accident, of a disastrous miscalculation, of a misreading of screens, and setting off catastrophic exchanges. Again, this is not getting a lot of attention, but it's one of the risks. If we start down this path of a renewed arms race, it's going to get harder to get off it. It's these are processes that feed on themselves, and again, people aren't paying much attention to this. They've got their minds on other things, but this is the kind of thing which could quite literally blow up in our faces.
I totally agree with you. You say in entrenchment that sooner or later, even the richest and most fortunate countries face systemic crises, including crises of their own making. And you say those are the times when the people, not just their institutions, are tested. How are the people doing, Paul?
Well, I think a lot of people are doing pretty well. But the whole question is how the political system as a whole will respond. 2020 is crucial. You mentioned the Democrats in the House, and they are having tremendous difficulty in dealing with the president. It's almost beyond imagining that a president would simply refuse to allow executive officials to testify before Congress.
Bizarre.
That he would just ignore provisions of law to the extent to which he does. Now, does he deserve to be impeached? Absolutely. I think what is holding Nancy Pelosi back is the strategic calculation, the question of whether that will advance or hurt Democrats' chances in 2020. That's a kind of tactical judgment. I don't think it's because she's a coward. I think it's because she has a different sense of what the political landscape is.
Oh, I don't disagree with you. I don't think she's a coward at all. I think that I would take issue with the fact that what we have here is the story of attacking a president for the last 3 years because he's a complete immoral idiot. And then then those on the left make a choice not to take the moral high ground, but instead take the political, which puts, as far as I'm concerned, them right in the same category to some degree as the president. And I do think this is about what's right versus what's wrong. And if you look at the polls, the polls about how many people want Trump reelected doesn't look good for him right now. Let's hope it stays like that. But I would venture to say at some point the Democrats could win on the moral high ground if they took it. I think that they put themselves in a very dicey situation if they don't go down that route. But we have to close. So I have to say to you, and unless you want to fight back and say, no, I don't agree with you, or I do. It's up to you. But I was going to say that so here we are. And we are in the midst of a constitutional crisis as far as I'm concerned. And talked about the entrenchment and the balance of power in the U.S. and three co-equal branches of government. Both sides have given away much, Paul, and I don't ask this question lightly. I respect your opinion. Does our republic survive the assault on its institution if Donald Trump is reelected, and even if he's not?
Well, if he's not reelected, I think it does survive. If he is reelected, I think I really don't know what's going to happen. I tremble for the future.
Thank you, sir. Lovely to speak with you. Great book.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. I've been speaking with Paul Starr. His book is Entrenchment, Wealth, Power, and the Constitution of Democratic Societies. To purchase the book, visit Amazon.com. Thank you for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a production of Resec LLC. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is available at hallicasserjayne.com and on all your favorite apps. Be sure to visit us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and follow me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show. Until next time, this is Halli Casser-Jayne.